Good morning. We're going to explore our last law of exponents. That's called power of a quotient rule. Very similar to power of a product rule, in which we're going to see exponents that match. And in those cases, we're going to take those bases and we're going to divide them. So our directions for this part say use the power of a quotient rule to rewrite each expression as a single exponent. So this is part A, so it'll match your part A on your assignment. We're going to take 10 divided by 5, which is 2. We're going to keep that same power. So that one was pretty easy. Just 10 divided by 5, which is 2. Number 2, a little more challenging. We have 1/4 divided by -2 to figure out. Now I kind of purposely wrote that just a little bit weird because I'm going to write it as a fraction. So when we divide fractions, we don't really do that. We can flip them and multiply. So I'm going to change that to 1/4 times -1/2, which that's going to equal, when I multiply straight across the top, I get -1, and across the bottom, 4 times 2 is 8. So -1/8, keep the same power to the -7th power. Question number 3. Again, we have those matching exponents. So we're going to divide those bases. So -15 divided by 3 is equal to -5. We're going to keep that same power. Question number 4. 2 fractions this time. Same exponents. So we're going to go ahead and divide those fractions. -6/5 divided by -3/2. We don't actually divide fractions, we flip that second one and multiply. Now, since we have a negative divided by a negative, I know my answer is going to be positive, so I'm going to go ahead and leave those negative signs out as I make this switch. Notice I keep the first one the same, and then I flip the second one. So if you understand canceling in there, you can go ahead and cancel along the way. If not, just go ahead and simplify it at the end. So when I multiply straight across the top, straight across the bottom, I end up with 12/15, which we can divide each of those by 3 to end up with 4/5. 4/5. And again, we're going to write that as a single exponent. And so it's going to be 4/5 to the 10th power. Okay, question number 5. We've got decimals this time. So I'm going to show you with long division, but you're welcome to use a calculator if you'd like. So notice these do have the same exponents. So now I'm going to divide those decimals. So it's 1.5 divided by 2.5. Okay, and I know that's a negative, and I'll deal with that in just a couple seconds. We're going to move those decimals to the right. 25 won't go into 15, so I'm going to go ahead and add a 0 on. 25 into 150 goes 6 times. Please notice I moved this decimal over and I put it straight up here. So 6 times 25 is actually 150. So that's what it comes out to be, 0.6. But we had a negative divided by a positive, so that's going to make this answer negative. And again, I'm going to keep that same exponent. Okay, and question number 6, very similar. 5.6 divided by 4. 4 goes into 5 one time. I subtract, I get a 1, I bring down the 6. 4 goes into 16 4 times with that decimal in between. So I have 1.4 to the -14th power. Okay, so that was part A. Part B tends to be a little more challenging, but this first one is pretty easy. So what we have to understand is we're solving for x. So in this case, x is representing the exponent. So remember, all of those exponents need to be the same. So this is just simply x equals 9. Okay. All right, number 2, we've got -1/2 and an x and a 2/3. All right, and I was debating on how we needed to solve this. So this is what I'm going to share with you, is we have our negative 1/2 divided by x. So I'm going to write this kind of as a giant fraction. Negative 1/2 in the top and x in the bottom. It looks kind of weird. Equals 2/3. So what I'm trying to do is write this as a proportion. Might be an easier way to solve when those x's are in the bottom. So I'm going to go ahead and do cross products. 2 times x is 2x, and negative 1/2 times 3 equals negative 3/2. I'm going to divide both sides by 2. Okay, and just like what we did before, I'll put this over 1. We don't really divide fractions, we flip and multiply that second one. So 3/2 times 1/2. When I multiply straight across the top, straight across the bottom, I end up with negative 3/4. Negative 3/4 is my answer. Okay. Now the next one I'm going to show you a little differently because we're going to start with x. This one, x came second. Okay, so that's why I'm going to show you something a little different here. This just simply says negative x divided by 6/7 equals 14. Well, if I'm dividing by 6/7, the opposite of that is to multiply by 6/7. So it's a little different than what we're doing here. So I'm going to be multiplying both sides by 6/7. Okay, so over here, these are going to cancel out. I still have a negative x left, so be careful with that. And 14, or 14/1 times 6/7. Again, you can multiply straight across the top, straight across the bottom, and you end up with 84/7. But this can be simplified. 7 goes into 84 12 times. But please note that on the other side, x is not quite by itself yet. We have that negative x there. So I'm going to have to divide both sides by negative 1. We're going to get x equals negative 12. Negative 12. Question number 4. We've got 4.5 divided by negative x equals 1.5. So I'm going to do very similar setup as I did in number 2. So I'm going to have 4.5 over negative x equals 1.5. Now, because I'm trying to write a proportion, I'm going to put this over 1, so it looks like a fraction. Do some cross products. Negative x times 1.5 is negative 1.5x, and 4.5 times 1 is 4.5. I'm going to divide both sides by negative 1.5, and I get an answer of x equals negative 3. Number 5, we're going to have x divided by negative 18 equals negative 7/9. Of course, I could have written it like this as well. I'm going to multiply both sides by negative 18. Okay, and on this one, I'm going to do some canceling. That number is going to get huge if you go ahead and multiply it. I can multiply or cancel a denominator and a numerator that divide out. So all I have left is negative 7 times negative 2, which is positive 14. Okay. Number 6, a lot like 2 and 4, so I'm going to write a proportion for this one. Negative 9.6 over x equals negative 3. Again, I'll put that over 1, so it's a fraction. Do your cross products. I have negative 3x equals negative 9.6 times 1 is negative 9.6. Divide by negative 3, x is going to equal 3.2. All right, and our last two are, we have x divided by 7/8 equals 2/7. Okay, so for this one, I'm going to multiply both sides by 7/8. Okay, please note x has that negative sign in front of it, so don't forget about that. Do a little canceling here. We have a 7 and a 7, so let's get rid of those. We have a 2 and an 8. We can divide both of those by 2. We end up with 1/4. So negative x, is going to equal 1/4, but I have to divide by -1. So x is going to equal -1/4. -1/4, which is answer choice 3, Roman numeral 3. Okay, and our last one, we have -18 divided by 2, so we end up with kind of an easy problem. -18 divided by +2 is equal to -9. So we're looking for -9 to that 15th power, which is answer choice 1. Okay, so again, these are called power of a quotient rule. If you have any questions at all, please don't hesitate to send me an email. We can chat. I can show you some more examples. You just have to let me know. Thanks and have a good day.